Yesterday's news.
Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme and podcast which looks at news stories of today through the papers of yesterday. Dredging this week. Never far from the news of late, particularly around Douglas, where there seem to have been various problems with silting up and tidal issues. But dredging, nothing new on the Isle of Man. You'd be amazed to hear, perhaps. Let's have a little brief dredge through some of the news, and we go to the Peel City Guardian of Saturday, February the 7th, 1914, silting of Peel Harbour. There's some costing of works. One recommendation: rubble mound, solid concrete pier, retaining wall and quay, reclamation of ground, tinted red, dredging of area hatched with red lines. £104,000, huge amount of money in 1914, you would think. Underneath it says, Peel Harbour, my report of the 24th ultimo, having been duly considered by the Harbour Commissioners, and they having decided that they could not at the present time recommend the carrying out of any of the proposed new works except the groin on account of their costliness, perhaps not surprising, it was agreed that permission should be sought from His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor to make application to the Tynwald Court for a sum not exceeding £6,000 to be expended in deepening a certain area adjacent to the breakwater and in dredging a fairway channel to the inner harbour, and I was instructed to prepare a report and a plan showing how this £6,000 could be most advantageously expended, and in accordance with those instructions I now beg to submit the following report and accompanying drawing marked 2. In my opinion, the writer goes on, the best value for the money, £6,000 in brackets, would be obtained by deepening a portion of the outer harbour to 12 foot below LWOST, this deepening commencing at the present 12-foot contour line, which leaves the breakwater at a point 350 feet from its seaward end, running thence in a southeasterly direction and finishing at this level on a line 400 foot from the seaward end of the breakwater and at right angles thereto. Just £6,000 being spent on this. It goes on for some time and finishes up saying, I have not dealt with the question of groins or other preventative measures in this report, as it is not proposed that any portion of the above £6,000 should be spent on such works. But till something of the kind is undertaken, of course, silting will go on. I hope shortly to visit the south coast of England, where groins are very extensively used, and on my return will immediately put before the board some recommendations which I trust will have the effect of arresting sand movement along the shore at Peel. Are there groins there now? I don't think there are. Signed W. H. Blaker in 1914. A bit of a silting issue going on then, it might seem. If we skip to the Mona's Herald, Wednesday, May the 28th of 1930, dredging commences. The dredging of the outer harbour part of the Red Pier extension scheme began on Monday and will continue throughout the summer. The dredger and hopper arrived from Southampton over the weekend. They travelled together to Milford Haven, but there they parted company. The hopper, James XXXIX, James the 39th by my maths, arrived under her own steam on Friday evening, and the dredger was towed from Milford Haven by a tug, arriving on Saturday. Dredging will continue day and night, Sundays excepted, until the work is completed. 3 shifts being employed. The dredger was moored in position on Monday and started to work at once. The contractors are the James Dredging, Towage and Transport Company of London. Amazing to think they were doing all those shifts, but how long did it last? Not that long. This started in May of 1930. By June of the same year, we have a piece entitled Night Dredging Stopped. Following numerous complaints against the night operations of the dredger working in Douglas Outer Harbour, arrangements have been made for dredging to stop between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. The hideous noise made by the dredger during the hours of darkness was referred to in Tynwald Court on Monday, where Mr. Alf J. Tier of South Douglas asked the Receiver General, Mr. J. Qualtrough, if anything could be done to obviate this unearthly noise. They were advertising the island, said Mr. Tier, but the noise of the dredging would drive people away. Sounds vaguely familiar from the recent prom works, doesn't it? Mr. A.B. Crookall was stressing the importance of the noise, which could be heard all over Douglas, being stopped when the Deputy Governor reminded him that he was not entitled to make a speech. The Receiver General said the Harbour Board were very sorry that the noise had occurred, but they couldn't dredge without noise. As soon as they found there were objections to the noise during the night, they made application to the persons doing the work, and they had promised to stop dredging between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. He added that the work was a month late in starting. No surprises there then, perhaps. And they'd been trying to make up time. He hoped everybody would be satisfied that the night work was to stop. Hear, hear, it says in brackets. Mr. T. Radcliffe asked if it was intended to leave the beautiful memorials in connection with the promenade widening on the front during the summer. I think his tongue firmly in cheek there. The Deputy Governor, I'm afraid I must ask for notice of that question. One result of the stoppage of night dredging is that around 16 local men will probably have to be discharged, and the remaining men under contract from Southampton will be reduced a step in rank as an entire shift will be dispensed with. Another dredger is expected shortly to deal with the rock work. The work, which was to have taken around 6 weeks, will now occupy about 14 weeks. I wonder if they've been doing the work around Glen Helen late with the drainage there. Who knows? Not without its problems, this work, it has to be said. If we go to the Examiner of Friday, May the 1st, 1931, mishaps at dredging operations. Twice within 3 days, misfortune has attended the dredging operations at the Red Pier last weekend. On Thursday, as reported in last week's Examiner, a small boat capsized while its occupants were engaged in adjusting the dredger's moorings, and 5 men were thrown into the water. Fortunately, they were all rescued and were little the worse for their immersion. On Saturday, Duncan Sinclair Lamb, an employee of the dredger Garvogue, was hauling the anchor of the rock-breaking dredger with the object of overrunning it to cope with the heavy swell. When lashing the anchor to the small boat in which he was to carry out his task, the boat was thrown by the swell of the water against the stern of the dredger, and his arm was crushed between the small boat and the dredger. He was at once removed to Noble's Hospital, where examination revealed a fracture of the left arm just above the wrist. Dangerous job, dredging. Then in the Ramsey Courier of Friday, September the 30th, 1932, so 2 years into this scheme, we read the Red Pier scheme dredging nearly completed. 2 years of dredging, it would seem. Dredging operations in connection with the new harbour scheme at Douglas, which had been carried out by the large bucket dredger Garvogue, have been considerably curtailed. The small rock dredger is still operating. It is announced that it is intended to keep it at work as long as the weather will permit, and it is hoped that she will be able to continue until the end of October. More than 3/4 of the total area to be dredged in order to provide a foundation for the pier extension and adequate berthage each side has been completed, and next year will see the end of the dredging operations in connection with the scheme, 1933. If the rock breaker can be kept going until the end of next month and the weather allows a fairly early start in the spring of 1933, there is every prospect that the dredging will be finished before the summer season. The Garvogue left Douglas for the winter last week. After sailing out of the harbour, she was picked up in Douglas Bay by the Glasgow tug Strongbow and taken in tow. Her destination is Aberdeen, where she'll be engaged in dredging the enclosed harbour during the winter months. During the last 2 winters, the Garvogue has laid up in Ramsey Harbour, or Ramsey Harbour, as it actually says in the article. Some of these things sound vaguely familiar, don't they? However, to finish off, perhaps if dredging was injurious to health, what you might need is Dredges Heal All. I kid you not. Dredges Heal All, a cure for all ills. This is from the Manx Sun, February the 15th, 1839. Going way back. Dredges Heal All, we read, or Celebrity Embrocation, has long been known throughout the west of England as the most efficacious remedy for rheumatism, rheumatic gout, lumbago, pains in the limbs and numbness, sciatic and paralytic affections, toothache, face ache, sprains, bruises, fresh wounds or cuts, burns and scalds, spasms, cramp, stiffness of the joints or neck, frozen limbs, chilblains before they are broken, and whooping cough. Pretty much everything, really. It is likewise an infallible cure for that dangerous disorder, the quinsy or sore throat, in which it was never known to fail after a few hours' application. It is also an excellent remedy for whitlows, so common on the fingers of country people who are exposed to the cold, and is confidently recommended to all who may suffer from any of these complaints. Observe that none can be genuine unless the stamp affixed to each bottle contains the name and address of Barclay & Sons, number 95 Farringdon Street, who have purchased the property in this valuable article from the executors of the inventor William Dredge, late of Wishford, Wilts. Retail price 1 shilling 1.5 pence and 2 shillings and 9 pence per bottle, and sold by appointment by R.G. Kelly Chemist and Company, Marketplace, Douglas, who was the sole agent for this most incredible of cure-alls. Have a problem? Just dredge it, it would seem. Which is what we've been more or less doing in Douglas recently, if somewhat more slowly. Dredging, never far from the news. Dredges heal all, a miracle cure for pretty much anything. Suffice to say, dredging is old news. Until next week, cheerio. You're gonna be yesterday's news.